Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of my reading and writing video diaries. It has been a while. It has been a while. It has been a couple of months. I think it was actually 2 months, and I have not done a video diary since then for many reasons. I've been as I always say, I'm very busy. But I was also working on other projects. I was working on some shorter writing projects, and so sometimes it's harder to talk about them sometimes because I'm I don't know why it's harder to talk about them. Mainly because I would work on it for a very short period of time and then I wouldn't necessarily come back to it. So it always felt like I was working on something different. I have some possibly good news about one of the pieces of writing that I did in that period, or something that I've submitted to a journal. So, we're gonna wait. Maybe I'll have some good news to report next video diary. But otherwise, the kind of impetus for me starting up again, apart from the fact that I'm not as busy as I used to be, is that I've restarted working on my novel. And my novel, as you may have remembered from the last time I worked on it and I was talking about it, I worked on a draft last year, and I got up to, I think it was about 30,000 words, um, or maybe longer than that. And it was about maybe like close to half of what I wanted for my draft of my novel. And then I kind of put it away because I was getting really busy with my work and I wanted to work on some shorter pieces. Um, and I was also kind of reaching a point where I was like, I don't really necessarily know what I want to do with this. And as is often the case when you feel the need to put something away and to work on something else, it's often because you need to actually rethink what you're doing and kind of reapproach it and figure out why you were doing it. So I did spend the last few months kind of, as I was working on other projects, thinking about what I was going to do with my novel. And, a lot of the reading that I was doing was influencing what I was thinking about for my novel. And in particular, I was reading a novel most recently called The Woman in White. It's a Wilkie Collins novel. It's an 18th century novel. And it really inspired me. I think mainly because I found it so pleasurable. Um, I don't often read novels that are just so immensely pleasurable, like you just read it and it's just enjoyable to read. And, but also doesn't feel like I always kind of hate reading just pleasurable novels that don't necessarily have any sort of weight or uh, something else to them. And this definitely felt like it had something else. And it had that great mixture that I always really love to read, which is like sheer pleasure with some sort of interesting difference to it. And it inspired me in many ways. It inspired me to really think about the structure of my novel, which I had been kind of considering anyway. So I guess originally my novel was going to be about this character who commits suicide, and then like it was going to be told through the stories of all the other people around him who knew him. And I mean, even though there's lots of novels out there that end in suicide and that are very important and popular and kind of key to the development of the novel, like um, Anna Karenina and Madame Bovary, and actually right now I'm reading the Sorrows of Young Werther, which is famously about suicide, but I'm not spoiling anything for you there. So yeah, there's a lot of books that are a lot of serious novels that are about suicide. So I didn't necessarily feel like it was a wrong topic to approach, but I was also like, what am I going to say that's new or different about this? And um, as I become more developed as a writer, I think I'm getting less interested in stories that have sad endings. So um, the fact that this was going to be a kind of a bummer of an ending was something that I really didn't necessarily like, and so I was trying to think of a new way to approach it. And so I've kind of approached it with the idea of, oh, and this is where the woman in white came in. Oh, uh, the first half of the novel will be about um, this character's suicide. But it will become revealed that there is something else going on there and that the character may not have actually committed suicide. And I won't go into further detail because that's what I'm figuring out now. But I kind of like that idea that the ending of my original idea is actually kind of the beginning of my new idea for the novel. So this has meant, obviously, a lot of rewriting, which I'm totally fine with. In many ways, over the last year or so, I've been kind of living with a lot of the characters that I developed for the first draft. And so it's kind of good to have written that first draft. I kind of see that first draft as like a way to flesh out some of the characters. And now what I'm doing is kind of getting to the more of the plot, the structure of the plot. And I've also made some decisions about how I want to structure the story. And one of them is that I read this book. I think one of my last videos was about it, called Edgewise, and it was about the actress and short story writer Cookie Mueller, and it was an oral history. And I've read other oral histories, mostly on the internet, like short things about particular events, and I like the structure of it. And in some ways, I feel like it's a very casual but exciting structure, where people tell the story, but it's kind of interspersed, and it's not just like one person telling the story and then another person telling the story, so on and so forth. It's more all different people telling the story at the same time, and I'm also thinking about how a lot of documentaries are done. This is how they're done. They don't have one singular voice. They're often through several different voices. So all in all, this is how I'm kind of approaching it now. I'm approaching it more as like, as I said, several different voices telling the story, and it's interesting. I like it. I definitely have to refine it in many ways. Like I have to refine the voices. The voices sound very similar right now, but it feels exciting when I'm writing it. It doesn't feel like I'm just a big part or a big issue that I have with a lot of like when I'm writing a normal short story or a normal novel piece is that it feels done before. You feel like you've read this sort of thing before, and I become, you become like, why am I doing this? If I've read this 100 times before, why am I just doing another version of it? And I suppose that for some people, they can find a way to think about it in a new way that makes them feel like, oh yes, I am doing something different. But for me, that's been the major challenge of my writing ever since I finished my master's degree. I always, at the back of my mind, I was always thinking, oh, you're a much better writer, but at the same time, you're always kind of writing what everyone else is. And this, I feel, is different, and I really like it. Like the problems I'm encountering are not necessarily the kind of standard problems you'd encounter in like a standard fiction kind of writing scenario. And so that is exciting, like trying to figure out how to do it properly is exciting. So I feel very animated by it. I mean, who knows how long this is going to last. You always start out very optimistic and then hit all sorts of walls. But I have written about 4,000 words in the last, I would say, 4 days. So that's actually quite good. I mean, 4,000 words, if I'm planning a 100,000 word manuscript, that's about 5% of what I need to write. In 3 days, that's pretty good. So I'm going to keep going with this. Hopefully I will continue with it. I am going to run into issues later, I know. I've started to think about the kind of what happens after the suicide, and I'm going into sort of, there's going to be some crazy things that happen in it, and which I'm actually quite happy to do, but it'll be a challenge to figure out how to do it in a way that's convincing, or in a way that the reader will follow me with, you know? So, so yes, um, that's essentially, hopefully, caught you up on what I'm doing right now. As I said, I'm reading The Sorrows of Young Werther. I mean, it's not taking me very long to read, but I stopped halfway because um, my old teacher for my master's program, Russell Smith, has written a novel, or not a novel, sorry, a collection of short stories called Confidence. And I'd actually heard him read some of the stories before, and I'd actually read one of the stories like years ago, years and years and years ago, like probably like almost, I want to say almost 10 years ago. Um, and uh, and so I was excited to read it, and I am excited, and I'm reading it, and it is exciting. Um, yes, I really do like it. One of the things I really like about Russell's writing is he writes a lot about contemporary Toronto, and he's not afraid to actually talk about contemporary Toronto, and he talks about it in a very intelligent way. Um, and so it's it's definitely not my Toronto, um, although one of the stories does take place like literally like down the street from me. Uh, but it it is um, it's a different Toronto. It's definitely a kind of more upper class Toronto than the Toronto I encounter. Um, but it's exciting to read things that other authors just don't even mention. And I think that's what literature should be doing. It should be describing the world the way it is, and not the world the way we hope to remember it. That aspect I really enjoy, and he can be very good at description, and I also really enjoy that. So I'm going to continue reading it, and hopefully finish the Sorrows of Young Werther soon as well. And but apart from that, I hope to do some good writing. I may have less work this summer. Who knows? We'll see. But in general, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to, doing more writing. And otherwise, I will see you next week. I hope you have a good week. Bye-bye.